Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another tutorial. In this one we're learning how to build a query builder. So what we really want to be able to do is to do something like this. So I want to be able to create a query builder like this, instantiate a query builder, and then just run something like this, and then it will generate a query that will get me these results. So like here, I tell it table is going to be users and then get, or table is users but then get all results. The same here. Or I should be able to build a query like this where I specify what columns to select from which table, and the where clause here, name should be equal to John, for example, and then order by, the column we're ordering by and the order in which we're ordering by, and then limit, maybe how many records to limit, and offset is for how many records to skip before we begin to actually read those records, and then get those records. In a similar manner, we should be able to add joins as well, and we should be able to add an or, like where name is equal to John or name is equal to Peter, or and where, so that we can have and name is not equal to Mary, limit, order by, and so on. Also, we should be able to not just select but use these aggregate functions here. Okay, and then what else should we be able to do? Aliases here, and then also update a table like this, and also delete like that. So let's begin to create our project and see how that would work. So inside my folder here, so I've created a folder on my drive, so you can create this folder anywhere, and then I've dragged it into my text editor, which is Sublime Text. Now you can use any text editor of your choice. This is mine, and I'm going to create a few files here, but then I want to start a server inside my folder. So I'm going to open the command window in this folder, and I'm going to type, actually let me go inside that folder. I've got this file that I'm showing you right now, that I was showing you just a minute ago, and I'm going to type PHP. Now you'll need to have PHP running on your system, of course, and you can do that by installing XAMPP and then opening the control panel, and then start Apache and MySQL, because we're gonna need both. All right, so here I want to start a server. I'm going to type PHP space -s and then type localhost, since this is a localhost, and then I'm going to give it a port number of 90 and then press enter. So a server is started in this particular folder and it's on this URL. So I'm going to copy that URL and come to my browser and paste it in here. All right, so since there are no files in there, it just says not found, but if you see this, it means things are working as intended. You should also have MySQL, so I'm just going to open another command window, and I'm going to log into MySQL. We could use PHP My Admin, so if you prefer that, what you do is you open a new tab and then type localhost /PHP My Admin, then you can create your database from there. I'm going to do it from the command line instead, because I just prefer that. Okay, so we type MySQL, user is root, and my password is empty string, so I'm just pressing enter after that. Now I want to create a database so that we can have something to test our concept on. All right, so let's see here. We're going to say create database, and the database name will be query builder. Now you can name it anything you want, just don't include spaces. Don't forget the semicolon at the end, and press that. And so I want to just copy this. So I'm going to say use, so that I can use that database. And as you can see now, the database is selected. Now there are no tables in this database, so let's create a table at least. So I'm going to say create table, and I'm going to call it users, and open bracket. Let's go to the next line, and here I want to put my columns. So the first column is ID. It's going to be an integer, and it's going to be a primary key, and also it's going to have auto increment on it. But I want this to be unsigned, meaning no negative values here. And then I'll put a comma. Let me make the second column, which is name. This one is variable character of 100 length. It's also nullable, meaning we can save it. We can save this row without specifying that value. So variable character again for email, and it's also nullable. And then let me close that and put my semicolon there. And it seems things have worked as they are supposed to, because it says query was okay. Now let me describe the users table, and there it is. So which means I have a users table now, but let's insert a few records in there just for it. So I'm going to say insert into where is this? Insert into users. And then we have our column names. So the columns we're going to specify are name and email. And then we'll have some values. So values, let's go to the next line. This one is going to be John, maybe John Doe, like that. And then email will be john@email.com. Close that. And then let's put another record, Mary Doe. And this one will be mary@email.com. Let's put a third one. And this one will be Peter Doe. And then this one will be Peter@email.com. And close that. Put the semicolon. So let me just confirm that I've put everything as needed, and then press enter. Okay, so now we have some records, and I can prove that by querying these records. You can do that with select or from users. Okay, so there we go. We have the records that we want. And that does it for creating our database in the command window. What I need to do now is, oops, my mouse isn't responding anymore. Okay, so now I can go back to my project here, and we can use that database we've created. All right, guys, so in our folder here, I'm going to create a new file, and this one will be the index file, the main project file. So index.php, that's what I'm going to name it. And then within that, I'm going to create, let me include certain files. So I'm going to require two files here. First of all, the config.php file, so that it's editable. And then I'm going to also add an autoloader. Now the autoloader file is going to load any classes that we instantiate to make sure that they exist, because that way we only include files that we need in the project, not including everything, right? And then when we are done with that, I'm going to instantiate a query builder. I'm going to call it QB, and I'm going to say is equal to new query builder, like that. And then I can now use QB to do stuff like select from, okay, what table is that? Users. And then get all, like that. Okay, so that alone should give me a result. So let me do res is equal to at the end, and then I'm going to, let me echo some pre-tags, some HTML pre-tags, because they make things look nicer, especially when we're printing arrays. So let me print that result. Okay, so none of this exists already, and this is our job now to create it. So let me start with the config file. Let me create that config file. It's the one that's going to contain the information on how to connect to the database. So config.php, and I'm going to define a few constants here. We use constants because they're always available. Their scope is global. So DB name is going to be query builder, because that's what we made it to be, _DB. And then let me duplicate this a few times. So we're going to have the password here. The password for our database is empty. And then the username. The username is root. Now you put what your actual username and password. These are default values, but you can put yours in case you changed them. So here there's a host. Now the order of these doesn't matter, so localhost. Now if your MySQL has a different port number than 3306, you have to specify it there like so. Okay, so that's the host, and what else? The host, the database name. Am I forgetting something? Maybe not. Okay, so that's the config file, and let's close it for now. Then let's create our autoloader. So this is the file that will autoload our classes in case we didn't load them already manually. So this one is autoloader.php. Now this one uses a function called SPL register, autoload register, like that. So that function, what it does is it accepts a function. Now you could just put a function name, but I prefer to just give it the function right there. So we're gonna give it an anonymous function. That function will receive a class name whenever there is a class that isn't found. So in short, what happens is if I try to instantiate a class that I haven't loaded yet, this function is going to be called. So whatever I do in here will determine what happens next. So since it gives me the class name that's missing, I can just create a file name here based on that. So I'm going to say file is equal to class. Now, since we're going to name the class files the same as the class name, the file and the name of the class are the same, we can just append .php to the end of the class name, and that should be a valid file name. So we're just going to check if the file exists and then load it. So require file. This way, if a class isn't found, this function will just add it to the system. That way there is no error. Okay, great. So now we have that. This is taken care of in that. Now we need the query builder class. So let me right click and create a new file. Now you can put these classes in separate folders, but this tutorial is not about that. So that's entirely up to you. So query builder.php, I'm going to name it exactly like the class name. That way I avoid, that way it can easily be autoloaded. So query builder class, and then I'm going to name the class query builder, of course. And then it's going to have a public constructor function. Now this constructor runs immediately we instantiate this class, which is this part right here. So once we do this, this function runs automatically. And so this is the best place to actually create a connection to the database. So I'm going to make a variable that is protected. Protected just means we can't access it from the outside of the class, and also actually that's all it means. So this is con is equal to no. That's short for connection. Now we need it to be inheritable but not accessible from the outside. That's why we say protected. If we wanted it private, then it wouldn't be inheritable by child classes. So this connection is equal to new PDO, because we're going to use PDO PHP data objects class to connect to our database. We're going to add a connection string, and then we're going to add the DB user value and then the DB password value. And then now let me create that string. So that string is going to contain the connection string, which starts with the driver name, which is MySQL. And then I will put the host name like that, which is going to be coming from DB host. And then this way, when we do this, put a semicolon after that, and then concatenate DB name equals, and then we'll put DB underscore name semicolon. And that's it. This is how we instantiate the class. This is how we make a connection. So if the connection is all good, then things are great. Otherwise, we should probably surrender at this point. Now you can put error handling as you wish. Normally this would be put in a try catch situation, but for the sake of the tutorial, this is fine. So far so good. Here we have these functions that we are running, and that one I don't want to get an error, so let me just create those functions. There's the from function, and it actually gets in a table name, and then okay, so that from function, and then there's a get all function. Okay, so that at least we have these two going. So let's try and run this and see what we get. So if I refresh, I should get a couple of errors here, and there we go. So it says call to member function get all on null. So let me explain a few things here. Here we are chaining these functions. So there's query builder, and then we are running this function here, but then we are also running another function ahead of it. This is called method chaining, because these are methods and we are chaining them together. This can still work if I did this instead, like so, because the space is just ignored. So this would still work the same way. Let me just test that theory. If we get the same, yeah, we're getting the same error, so that's great. So this is equivalent to if I did this like that, okay? So this is the same thing. Oops. It's the same as I run one statement like this, and then later on the result, if I do this actually. So it's the same as that one chained statement where I first run this function, and then finally I get the result and put it in here from the very last function on the chain. So this is the same as this one. Now, for this to actually work, it means, because this function is inside this query builder class, so which means this function should return this query builder class itself. That way I can run another function on the result of this, which will be actually the query builder class. So in order to achieve this, every function here should return itself. So not return itself as a function, but return the entire class. So I'm going to say return this, like so. Actually, on the get all, we shouldn't return that, because the get all function needs to return an actual result, right? So it's the only function that can be at the end. So let me just do that. So now we shouldn't get an error of any kind. So if I refresh, undefined variable on line 25, what? Oh, sorry, SQL. All right, and also something I forgot to mention. So now we shouldn't get any errors. Okay, great. Something I forgot to mention is that the way we've structured these don't have to follow this formula. You can remove most of this stuff from here and it will still work. Also, the order doesn't matter. You can start with limit 10 and then select and then from, and then you jump to this one. The only one that needs to be at the end of this chain is the get part here, or get all. The rest of these can be in any order and it will still work exactly the same. So we should make sure that that is actually true. So let's see how we can build a query just from the table here. Let me add a few variables that are protected at the top here. So the first one is select. This one is going to be equal to the star. And then let me duplicate this a few times. So we want the from as well, which will represent the table name. For now, it's just going to be empty. And then what else? There's the limit. The limit is empty as well. And then there's the offset. The offset will be empty as well. And then there's the order by. Even that will be empty for now. What else are we missing? So anything pretty much that we are using here should be there. There should also be a where. So let's do that. I'm going to duplicate this. Now the where is going to be an array, because we're going to put where stuff in there. Now there's two types of where. There's the and there's the or. So by default, the where clause is and. If I put two items in the where clause, it should be equal to this and equal to that. But sometimes you want maybe ID equal to true or name equal to. So let's put the or version there, like so. And then since we're going to be using prepared statements, we would need some way to store the actual data, because the query won't contain the data we are searching for. So this one is going to be data array, like that, which will contain the data. Okay, so those are the variables that will hold stuff. So from that, let me go down here and create the simplest form here. So let's create another function down here. This one will be a private function. That's because it's only going to be accessed by functions that live in this particular class. So this one is going to build the actual query. Okay. So this one will return the SQL statement. So this is where this will reside actually. So let me cut that here and paste it there. Okay, so that builds the query. But on the get here, all we are doing is saying return this, and then we build the query like that. Now the reason I'm doing this is because we have get and get all. They all do pretty much the same thing, only that get will return one result, get all will return multiple results. So they're pretty much the same. So I move the building of the query to another function so that both of them can call the same function, so we don't have to repeat ourselves. All right, now to build a query, we obviously start with, actually this is a bit misleading. Let's see, build query, we need to know the mode of this building, because otherwise there's update, there's select. So let's just assume it's a select all the time. So we're going to do select, and then we concatenate the from this from, which is up there as a variable, whatever is in there. Currently, by default, there is a star. So select star and then space again from, and then whatever the table is. So it's going to be this. The table is saved in the from variable like that. Then let me add a space at the end there. It's better to have too many spaces than none between these things. So select all from the table. And just like this, we should have a result. Now the from part should save into the from variable at the top there. So we're just going to say this from is equal to whatever the from that we sent there, like so. Okay, which is the table name. Now you could put type hinting here where you say this should be a string that we're expecting, and it doesn't return a string, it returns the query builder itself. So we can do that. You can do the same for all of these functions just to be more professional. So let's go back here and see what result we get here. If I refresh the page, I get undefined variable, but at least you see here there is something resembling some kind of a query. Now it doesn't know what from is on line 28, so let's fix that. Line 28 is this from table, like that. Okay, so let's refresh. Okay, so this is not correct at all. Select users from users. No, something is wrong. So when building the query, we added the wrong variables. This one should be the select part. Okay, so if I now refresh, you see I've managed to build a query at least. Select all from users, and this can read all the records from the users table. So that's working. Now let's add a few things like limit, offset, and order by. Those are pretty easy to do because they repeat this very part. Just don't forget to return this in every function. So 1, 2, 3. I'm going to duplicate that 3 times. And this one, let's start with limit. I'm just going to say limit. The limit expects a count of some kind, and this should be an integer. And yep, that does it. Just like that, we save the limit up there. Let's do the same for offset. Okay, now the offset is how we do pagination. Offset just means skip this number of rows before you start actually reading. So offset, and then this one, offset should be, it's also a count of some sort. So this is going to be an integer. And then finally, the order by. So this one is going to be order by, like so. And then this one is the, now the order by is going to expect 2 things: the column you're ordering by, and then the type of ordering. The type in this case is going to be by default descending. Now you can make it ascending, which is the default, but most of the time you find that you are reading posts, for example, you want to get the latest one first. So descending is a good default. And then this one is the column. This one is also a string expected, like that. Okay, now you don't have to do this type hinting. This is just optional. It only works in PHP 8 and above. So order by, this actually is written order at the top there, is going to be equal to the column that we are ordering by, but we're just going to put the actual text, which is order by, and then we concatenate the column. And then actually, let me just use double quotes. That way we can put the variables within the quotes themselves. So column and then type, like so. So it may read something like order by ID descending or ascending. Okay, So that is cool. We've added those. Now when building the query, we should concatenate those things. Now we should only add them if the items are not empty. So let's start with 1. We say if not empty, what usually comes first is the order by. So I'm just going to say this order, because a query will look something like this. Let's go to the let me refresh here. Let me find the query builder DB, and then I can go to the table here. As you can see, there's this select all from users, but I can edit this, and usually a query will go like order by ID in descending order, and then limit 10, and then offset maybe 30 or something like that. So this is the order that they go, order by, limit, and then offset. So we will follow that order here. So if order is not empty, then we add to the SQL, we say dot equals, and then that's going to be order by, and then wait, we're just adding this to the end. We've already designed that, right? So let me paste this here, because it's already like that, order by blah blah blah. Yes, okay, so that's order, and duplicate this 3 times. There's also now order, and then limit, and then there's offset. Okay, so it's as simple as that. Let's see what we get if we add those. So if they are not added, the query remains as it is. But then let's go to our index page and add those guys. So I'm just gonna put this down like so. That way we can see what we are adding. And let's do this. I'm gonna say limit 10. Now keep in mind that the order you write these does not matter. Order, and this is ID, and then it should be in ascending order, just so we know that it's working. And then there's offset. So as you can see, I haven't really followed the order here, but the query should come out as intended. So if I refresh, we should have a very nice query here. Call to undefined method query builder order. So order is undefined as a, so it's order by, like that. Now there's a magic method in classes which will run if the method you're trying to access does not exist. Then you can manage these errors a bit better, but it's beyond the scope of this video. So there we go. So we have select all from users, order by ID ascending, and we don't have the word offset here, which is crazy. Order by ascending, and then we're supposed to have like limit and then offset. So something isn't working right here. Where is this? So order by, limit, offset. So instead, let me do it the way I did it here. So I'm gonna grab this guy. So instead of just putting count here, I'm gonna do this and say this is the offset. So I'm gonna say offset, and then count over here. And let me copy this. Okay, great. So let's see how that looks. Okay, so it's all good. The only problem is some parts have more than one space. So let's fix that by replacing all spaces. When we return the query builder here, we'll return a string replace version. So let's say Actually, let's use preg replace. So we can put a regular expression, which is space one or more. And then we replace that with just a space, a single one, inside the SQL string. Okay, so this will be a much cleaner result. I'll refresh. And there we go. So select all from users, order by ID descending, limit 10, offset 1. So if I try this query, it's going to run just fine in here. Only that we'll get one result because we are telling it to offset by 1. So we'll get 2 results actually. And there we go. So number 1 isn't there because we are skipping it due to the offset. So this is a valid query, and that is good. Let's add the more stuff in the select. So let's go, if we say in the index here, instead of just from, I can move this to select like that. Now, of course, I can order these any way I want. I can start with from and still put select. But here I want to specify the column names like name, email, and then maybe ID, something like that. Now, the thing is, with the select function, we don't know how many parameters the user is going to add. If there are many columns, they'll add many. So we need to figure out how to capture those, which is different from where functions like this, where you know you're expecting 2 arguments. So let me go up here to the from part. Let me create the select function. So duplicate and start with select. Now, the way we do it, we know they are going to be strings anyway. So here I'm going to change that to columns. And then just put, before this, just put 3 dots like this. What that will do is it will tell PHP that however many variables are added here, just put them in one variable as an array. So that's what will happen. And then this select is going to be equal to, we implode, because now this is going to be an array. So we implode will convert an array into a string, but then you can specify what string will be in between those values. So columns, just like that. So select and then the from part. Let me just leave some double spaces here just in case, a space at the beginning and this space at the end, just in case when joining these strings there could be a problem. So let's see how that changes the query. So now it's select name, email, ID from users, which is still very valid. Okay, so that is good. So far so good. Our query is being built and it works as needed. So what's missing here is the where clause. So I want a where clause. Let's say where, for example. Now in the where clause, I can say something like where name, and then we're going to expect 3 parameters, the operator in between and the actual value, like so. So where name is equal to John. Now the reason we're putting 3 like this, because sometimes you may want to say where name is not equal to John, or where name is greater or equal to John, something like that. That gives you the freedom. Now, if you want to compare more than one item, you're just supposed to be able to still just duplicate the where clause and say maybe something like where ID is equal to 10, maybe. Or ID is equal to 1. And name is equal to John. Something like this, right? So let's create that part. So I can duplicate any of these, and let me say where. Now the where clause, like I said, expects 3 params. The first one is the column. Z column, another string of the operator, another string of the value. Okay. So this where. Now, since where up there is an array, we have to add to the array. So that's going to be equal to, let me just put double quotes here. So this is just going to be straightforward, where column and then operator and then value. It's as simple as that. We're just creating a string. But the only issue is these are actual values, and we want to use prepared statements. We don't want to be hacked with SQL injection. So I'll just repeat the column name here and then put a full stop, a full colon there to act as a representative. But then I need that value that's here for further use when I'm actually reading from the database, because first of all, we're just going to prepare the query. And then after preparing it, then we supply the values. So I'm going to say this, that's that data array we created. And we use the column name. And then we put the value in there. That way there's a key value pair on these guys. Okay, that is good indeed. Now, when building the query, we have to add the and operator here. So the where clause comes first before any of these, just after the select part. So if where is not empty, so then we can add to the query string here. So where is an array? This is an array. So all we need to do is implode this. So we can do something like where, and then we connect and say implode. What will be the glue in between? The glue will be an and, like that, and then the actual variable. Okay, guys. So let's come back here and see how that changes things. So if I refresh now, this is what we get. So we say select name, email ID from users where the ID is equal to full colon ID, which is a variable, and name is equal to name, order by ID, ascending, limit 10, offset 1. This is a very valid query that we are building. That's good, but we should also be able to do the or. So we'll say or where. And then instead of just adding where here, it should say and where, like that, so that it's more intuitive. So where this, and this, or this, right? So or email is equal to email at email.com. So we should have all of this. Now we don't have the and where and the or where function, so let's make those. Now these are going to be just calling the where function, the original where function, because we don't want to waste so much time repeating the code. So this one we will say and where. So when we say that, everything else remains the same. Only difference is that we are calling the where function just so that the functionality remains on the same page. So all we do now is say operator. We supply the column name, the operator, and the value. And that's it, really. That's all we are doing. So let's check this out. If I now refresh. Okay, so call to undefined method or where. It's not there? Oh, okay. I haven't created it. So all I need to do is duplicate this and where. They're pretty much the same. Okay. So now I can refresh. Let's see. There we go. So now we have ID is equal to ID and name is equal to name and email is equal to email. But we don't have an or. This is supposed to be or at the very end here, because the or is email. So how we fix that? We can fix that by putting a mode at the end here. let's just call it mode. The default will be and. Then here we can simply duplicate this and say if the mode is equal to and, oopsie, then we continue just as usual. But then if it's not, which is the else statement, if it's an or value, then we are going to add it in the or where, like that. So let's go up here. So we have that or where and the where. So these ones are and, these ones are or. Okay, now when building the query, that's where we have to figure that out. So if where is not empty, then we do this. But then let's check also the and where function. Let's check the or where actually. So if that one is not empty, we put or. But the problem is we don't need this where thingy here, because let's say for example there is some stuff in the where clause, then we won't need this where, so I can remove it like that, and we just concatenate with an or, which is great. But sometimes if it's only one item, there won't be this or, so we have to put it here as well, because this only works if there are two or more items, then it's going to be in between them. But if there's none, we're just simply concatenating, so we still need that or here. But also at the same time, if none of this was there, but this was there, we need that where clause here. Okay, so hopefully that's making sense. It's just thinking about how they connect these strings in the end. So if you don't do something well, you will see that how distorted the query string will be. Actually, I just need to duplicate this. Oh boy. If, what did I just do? I have to copy this. All right. I don't actually need those. I can just use, it's a single line, so I can just do else. So if the where clause is not empty, which means we already have a where, so this is fine. Otherwise, put a where clause there. So let's check it out. If I now refresh, we should see or here, but we don't. So something wrong. Let's see what's going on here. The or where, it's because I'm getting from the where again, so let me do or here. No, actually that was correct. So where is the problem? Maybe things are not going into the or. Let me make sure we have it there. Yes, we do. Okay, so I think the issue is coming from the, when we are calling the or where function here, we're supposed to change this mode that's on the original or, this one to or instead of and. So when we are supplying this here, I'm just going to do or here. So let's refresh. And there it is. It has changed. Let's add a few more ors just to see how they fare. And I've run out of things to write. Email is equal to maybe email 2. So there we go. So and then or, and then or, and so on. So everything is working as intended. Now let's get some actual results from this, because right now this is all speculative. So let me just remove these and ors, because we know they work. Let's see what results we'll get on the query. And that's the final query. Okay. Now what we need is a query function, something to actually run the query. So we build the query and let's run it here. So this one will be just a private function. So query will return a string. No. It will return a PDO statement. Now I don't know the type, but it actually maybe is PDO like this. PDO statement, maybe something like that. I don't know. You can print readable the type and it will tell you. So query will take in a query string. That's all we need. And then it will return a statement. So return the statement from the prepared statement that we make. So how we will start this is we have a connection which is coming from the top there, which is this con, and then we use the function that comes with PDO called prepare, and this one prepares whatever query we give it. We prepare the query first so that we don't get SQL injection. And this one will result into a prepared statement. So we can now use that prepared statement to execute the query. Now, when we execute the query, we will need some data in there in case there are placeholders that we added, which sometimes there will be inside data array. Also, something I almost forgot. If we come back here, we can make a private function called set defaults. So this one will clear all the values at the very top here before we try to run a second query. Otherwise, those items we don't replace will be taken over into the next query. We want to reset everything to the default values after we run one query, because then we'll need to build another query for the next querying test. Okay, so let's put this and that like that to set them to defaults. So I'm going to copy that. We should be able to do this defaulting thing after building the query. So I can do that here and say this set defaults. Alrighty, this is good. Now the get all part can run a query instead and get a statement back. So this is what we have right here. Now instead of return here, we can say SQL is equal to, because that's what we are getting, a query string. And then inside the get and get all, we are going to say this query to run the query, and then we'll supply that SQL. And then the result of this is going to be a statement. So we can use the fetch function on it, because that's a function that comes with PDO. And then the connection itself usually has a variable inside called the PDO, which is the connection, usually has a fetch obj. Now you can, if you want to fetch associative arrays, you can say assoc like that. But I want to fetch objects, so I use that one. Okay, so get, and then what are we returning here? We are returning the result of this fetch. So I'm just going to say return that. And then for the get all, we are doing exactly the same thing, only that, oops, I ended up copying instead of pasting. So the only difference here is this one has fetch all like that. Those are both are functions from PDO. Okie dokie. Let's see what we get now. Now if I refresh, let's see, maybe we get some actual result. So there's a syntax error, my kind of favorite error, because it just means I typed something terribly. You have an error in your SQL syntax. Do I now? Okay, let's check that out. So right here before the get all, or right before the query builder is done, I just want to see what query we have. So at this point, I'm going to say echo SQL. Just that. So let me refresh. Let's see what the error is. I usually am able to spot that. Select name, email, ID from users, where ID is equal to ID, order by, oh, wait, order by ID, this ID ascending, limit 10, offset 1. Now this looks pretty legit. Okay, saying near ID. Oh, it doesn't recognize this full colon there. Okay, so that's where the so-called error is. That's not really an error. It just means it's a prepared statement, so it should know this. Why doesn't it know this? Execute statement. Maybe because there's nothing in the data array. So, oh, see where the problem is when I reset defaults, then the data array becomes empty. So I think resetting the defaults should happen after we query. So let me move that set defaults right about there, and then return the statement. I think that should work. Let me refresh. And there we go. So we have an empty array. So it's working because we are returning an empty array. Let me go back to index. This one is get all. Now, if we just use get, we should get an empty object and not an array. Let me see here. Refresh. Okay, so that's an empty object or false or whatever. Okay, we're going to check that out, but let's see why where ID is equal to 1. Yes, the reason is we offset by 1. So let me remove the offset, or let me just offset by 0. Then we will have some kind of result. Because ID is equal to 1, and then there's only one of those. So there we go. We got a result. Very, very well there. But what about if we just use get and not get all? We should get an object. And there we go. One object. So things are working. Our query builder is building as it should, which is awesomeness. Now let's improve this a bit better, a bit more. Let's see here. What we need to do is delete and insert. So we need the insert and we need the delete. What else do we need? Maybe joins. Okay. So let's come here and add a few of these functions. So it's better to group them in a specific way. So before the gets here, let me, and the order by and the limits, let's do here on the from. So I'm going to duplicate this from thingy. So what we need is to be able to, actually, those updates should be where? Right here on the get, actually. So let me duplicate this. So let's say, for example, we want to just delete from a table. So I'm just going to do delete like that. And then what are we providing when deleting? Delete is like the final result, so it doesn't accept any variables. So after you do your where clause or where and stuff, then you say delete at the end. So how do we alter the query in this manner? Well, when building, we have to tell it the mode. So maybe we can add mode when build query and say this is a delete instead, okay? So that it builds it a little bit differently. And then with the update, where is this? Let me do this. Let me duplicate. Update requires to get an array of data. So that's data right there, the columns that we are updating. Now these columns should be added to the data array there. So immediately I'm going to say, because we need some data when updating, so immediately I'm going to say this data array. In fact, we just say array combine. Is it array combine? It's array merge. Sorry about that. We merge two arrays. Whatever is already in the data array plus whatever data we've been supplied now should all go in the same space. And this should still be this data array. Like that. Okay, so we save that data that we're updating, but then also this should be an update function now. Okay. Okay, good. So update, delete. Great. Now, how do we build the query if these order, limit, offset, they can remain as they are, though they are not needed in certain instances? So here we're going to have mode like that. Normally the mode is equal to select by default. So we're going to say if mode. Now you could use a switch statement instead. Maybe it's much neater. I don't know. Yeah, something like this. So select, boom. Then all of this should go in the select. Now the limit and offset, I'm going to leave those because sometimes you can use them in the update and even in the delete. So let me leave those out. If the mode is select, we do this. Else, let's do another mode. There's update and delete. Let me just remove the final else at the end here. So this one will be delete. Sorry. And let's go up here for the update. So how do things change when we are updating? Well, let's start with when we are deleting, right? So when delete, we just say delete, and then the from is coming next. We don't have this select part. It's redundant, useless. So delete from, and then the table itself, okay? Where, we can add a where clause, or where and where. All these are good. And then, yeah, actually that's pretty much it. So delete from, this is repeated, and then limit and order and so on can remain as well. So that's easy to do. Now we go to the update. So when we update, of course, this is going to say update. And we don't specify any select parts here. Update, we just go straight to the table name. And then after that, there will be the set keyword. And then the way things work with update is that you name the column and then you say where a set name is equal to maybe Mary or something, and then comma, ID is equal to 10, comma, and then you put the where clause. So that's what we need to do here. So before the where clause here we need to add some data. Now there is that data that is brought in from here when we say update, okay, build query, then we need that data here. Okay, so I'm going to put an optional value here for data, which will be empty sometimes, like so. So that's a string. That's an array. All right, so let's go back to where we are doing the query here. On the update, I think I should supply that data, which comes in here, because those are the values we need to update. But still, we are using prepared statements, so we are going to loop through the data if it's there. So we're going to say for each data as key and value right there. So within here, there's set, and I'm going to concatenate to the query string. Let's do dot equals. And then here we'll say the key, and then is equal to, and then full colon, and then the key again. And then like that. And then we'll put a comma, because there will be commas in between these. Now I could just use an implode with a function, but I don't want to complicate things. And then after here, we can just remove the trailing comma. So here I can just say SQL is equal to our trim, which is right trimming the SQL string again. Now what am I trimming on the right? I'm trimming any commas there, like so. Okay, great. So if we do that, things should be okay. And then where, and then okay. So cool, things should work. So let's give it a shot and see what query we have built at the end of it. So here I'm just going to echo the query. Oh, but wait, the actual update. So this update function will run the query, but we're not fetching anything, right? We're just running a query. So what I'm going to do is remove this part, because we don't fetch in the update. We also don't fetch in the delete. So I'm going to remove that as well. Okay, so it just returns the statement. So instead of getting, I should just check what rows were affected. So in the statement, there's a function called row count. We can return that instead. Same thing here when we update, we can return the row count so that we know how many we updated. And then there's the insert as well. So we're going to do that one. But before that, let's try and see if any of these will work. So I'm going to mute this one here. And then let's try to run a update. So let me come back here. I want to see from the database itself. So I'm going to edit John Doe to just man or something. So I'm going to say QB and then say from. Now from can be confusing sometimes. So we can duplicate the from function and make it a table function. It will do exactly the same thing. So that sometimes you use the word table. So same thing, nothing changes. Okay, so let's come back here. So we can say table users and then update. And then in the update here, I just want to say update name to be equal to man, something like that. But we need a where clause, right? So we're going to say where. So here we need three things where ID, and then what operation are we using is equal to, and then here 2. Okay, so that's my update thingy here. You can do it like this. So let's test it out. Let's see if it works. And I want to see what was returned. So I'm going to echo the result of that. So if I go here and refresh. Okay, undefined variable QB. So it should be capitalized here, sorry. Let's refresh. So it shows me that item number 1 was edited. So undefined variable res, but let's check if it actually worked. So let's browse. There should be man here. Oops. So it didn't edit. So let's see. Undefined variable res on line 21. Wait, what file is this? It's on the index page. 21. Where is that? Oh, it's just this here. So that's not a big problem. The problem here is that things didn't work. ID is supposed to be number 2 here, but I saw number 1 there, which is not right. So it did actually edit number 2. So things worked actually. I didn't notice that, but yeah, it did edit record number 2. And the count here is the how many rows were affected. So that's row count, which is 1 row was affected. So that's great. All right, so let's continue and make the rest of this. All right, so let's finish up with the insert because it seems the update works just fine. So let's go to the query builder. And the insert is not very different from the update function. The only difference is that, let's see here, update and insert. So what I'm going to do is duplicate the update part on the generate query here. So I'm going to duplicate that. Now we could move these into separate functions. Maybe we should do that so that one function is not this long. So I'm going to Ctrl-Shift-D. And this one is insert. And here we'll change that into insert. Then it's followed by into, insert into. And then we don't have the set here. What we have instead is the values, the columns, sorry. And then we have values like this, and then the actual values. So we will not need this part here. Let me remove that. What we will need is, let's see here. We're going to have an array called keys, and let's implode it here. So I'm going to do this to give me room for that. And what I would do is say implode. Now we're going to have something called keys. Now what we do is we just put a comma here and then keys like so. So those keys will come from the data array that is supplied here. The same one that has the values, but this time we want to get just the keys from it. So keys is equal to, there's a function called array keys that gets keys from any array. So that's data. So it will grab the keys only, so I can put them in here. This is exactly what I would do on the values side. The only difference is that I'm going to have to put a semicolon, a full colon, sorry, after each comma there. And let me do keys here as well. Okay, so those values there and the keys, and that should work, but we need one more for the beginning here so that we generate the query that we want. Now usually on the insert there's no where clause because we're just inserting, so I'm gonna delete these guys here. Okay, so insert into, usually that's where it ends. We shouldn't even allow this limit and order by. So what you can do is you can check to see what mode we are in and then omit that. So we can say if mode is not equal to insert, then maybe we can allow this part up to there, like so. Okay. Good. Now you can push these into smaller segments, like I said, so that it generates these, but we'll leave them for now as is. So let's see if we can insert. Oh, we need the actual insert function, just like we have the update here. Let me just duplicate this and change that to insert. It expects some data, just like here, and I'll put insert on this one, like so. Now when we insert, instead of returning the row count, let me just duplicate this, because we can just get the last insert ID instead. So here we run the query like so, but what we return is the connection. This one lives in the connection, not in the statement, and then it's called last insert ID, like that. All right, so let's give it a run and see how it works. So I will duplicate this, but then I will comment this part out, or maybe this one out. Okay, so here we have insert. Now we don't need a where clause when we are inserting. It's just this table insert, and then the name is going to be girl. This will be a new record. So we could do it this way so that it's easier to see what we are doing, comma, and the email is going to be girl@email.com. So just with that, we should be able to insert. So let's get back here and let's see what that happened, what that does. So let's refresh, and you see it shows me the last insert ID is number 4, so which means we did insert something. Let me browse that, and there it is. Now I can delete number 2. Let's try the delete feature there. So that's insert, but let's try delete. I'm gonna mute this as well, and then we'll do QB. We need the table name, and then delete. Now when deleting, we do need a where clause, so let's add a where clause. Now the where here is the column is ID, and then there's an equal sign in there. The ID should be 2. I want to delete that one that has the word man in it, this one number 2. So let's refresh and see if we get, oh, I should have echoed that to show a number 1 of how many records were affected. So let me browse here, and that one is gone. Let me delete any ID that's greater than 1. So let's go here and say greater than 1, but I'm going to echo this out and it should show me 2. So let me refresh. That's because 2 records were affected. Alright guys, so let me browse here, and as you can see, only 1 record remains. Now there will be times when you want to just run an actual query, like a raw unedited query. So in those cases, you will need one more function called raw. So let me just do that here. So that function will just run a raw query as it is. So let's say raw like this. Okay. Now you can design these in any way you want. That's entirely up to you. Now sometimes in the raw here, we're going to expect, actually we will just always expect a raw string. So the SQL itself will just be there like so. How do we do this? And then maybe some data here. We'll default it to an empty string. So in here, we're not building any queries really, because the query is already built. We're just running a query like that. So SQL, and then we just supply the data to, let's say this data array is equal to data, and then we return, actually we're just returning the query of this. Okay. Now at this point you may want to, let's see, what do we do here? Get all, since we're not building the query, let's see, query returns a statement. So from there we can do fetching that we want. So raw. I don't know how we can port this because there's the get function there. Let's see, get. Okay, maybe we put another function called run, which returns this. I don't know. Let's see, query, data, fetch. I think we can leave it. I'll leave it up to you guys to decide how you're going to handle this one. Design your own functions. So here, what we can do is, maybe there is this query returns a statement, right? So I'm gonna do statement like that. Oh, maybe let's just say a result like that. Or let's just return this. So at the end of this, there's a statement. Now you can do fetch or just as a final result. Now if you want, let me remove this. Now if you want, you can add a mode here, whether it's we are inserting, we are deleting, so that it knows what to do at the end. Does it fetch one? Does it fetch all? Or does it not fetch at all? But for now, I'll just let it fetch regardless what's going on. So let's try a raw statement here. I'm going to go to the index page. I'm going to duplicate this. And on this one, I'm going to say raw. And then this is just going to be a query. Select all from users. And that should be it, like that. because since you are running a raw query, you can put whatever you want in that query. And instead of echo, maybe it should be print R. Okay, let's come back here. Let's see. Okay, so as you can see, it did return the result. But one thing I forgot, it's returning too many things. So I'm going to say this connection and then fetch object, so that it just gives me an object instead of both an array and an associative array. And there it is. That's much better. Alrighty then, guys. Let me go back to the index page here and remove these. Let me remove that and move this to up there somewhere. Let me try that again. Okay, so that's looking much better. Alright guys, so hopefully you have learned something from this tutorial, and you can now start designing your very own query builders, and you can make them, you can make other classes extend this one so that you have functionality for the database at the same time, especially for things like models, those classes that read from a specific table. They can extend the query builder.